$250,000. That's what OceanGate charged to visit the Titanic. 5 people paid. 5 people died. But here's what every investigation missed. This wasn't a tragedy, it was economics. I'm going to show you the financial documents that prove how they built a business model where customer death was an acceptable outcome. First, you need to understand how they made $10 million selling waivers instead of safety. OceanGate wasn't a research institution. It was a for-profit adventure tourism company. They sold Titanic expeditions, 8-hour missions to view the wreck at 12,500 feet deep. Each ticket, $250,000. Between 2021 and 2023, they ran approximately 14 successful missions with 5 passengers each. That's 70 paying customers. Simple math, $17.5 million in gross revenue. This was a business, and like all businesses, it had a cost structure. The sales pitch was brilliant. Mission specialists, not tourists. Pioneering exploration, not thrill rides. OceanGate marketed exclusivity. Only a few dozen people had ever seen the Titanic wreck. You weren't buying a ticket, you were funding scientific research. Except here's what they didn't advertise. The submersible was experimental, uncertified, and operated outside all regulatory oversight, because that's where the profit margins lived, in the gaps between safety and law. And here's the document that made it all possible. The Liability Waiver. This is the actual waiver OceanGate passengers signed. Look at page 3. This experimental vessel has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. They spelled it out. Death, in writing. Signed, acknowledged, and, most importantly for OceanGate, legally binding. But here's the question nobody asked. Why would wealthy, educated people sign a document acknowledging they might die? The answer is economics. When you charge $250,000, you're not selling to people who worry about risk. You're selling to people who collect experiences. And OceanGate understood this psychology perfectly. The waiver wasn't a warning. It was proof of exclusivity. If financial investigations like this expose systems you never see covered, you're in the right place. We follow the money every week. Subscribe. So how did OceanGate avoid regulation? Simple. They operated in international waters. The Titanic wreck sits 370 miles off Newfoundland. No country claims it. No regulatory body has jurisdiction. The submersible was flagged in the Bahamas, a country that doesn't require passenger vessel certification for research. Stop. Before I show you what this saved them, you need to understand what proper certification costs, because that's where the calculation was made. To certify a passenger submersible through the American Bureau of Shipping or Lloyd's Register, estimated cost $2 to $5 million. Testing, documentation, third-party inspection, materials verification. It takes years. OceanGate skipped all of it. Stockton Rush, the CEO, publicly called certification stifling innovation. But let's translate that. Certification would have cost more than 1 year's revenue. The business model couldn't afford safety, so they didn't buy it. They bought waivers instead. The submersible hull was made from carbon fiber, industry standard for deep-sea vessels, titanium. Why did OceanGate choose carbon fiber? It's lighter, yes. Former employees raised concerns. David Lockridge, OceanGate's Director of Marine Operations, wrote a report in 2018 detailing safety issues. He was fired. The Marine Technology Society wrote to Rush, warning that experimental approaches could result in negative outcomes. Rush ignored them. Because this is what happens when profit is the priority, warnings become obstacles. And they said safety regulations were just bureaucratic red tape. This proves regulations exist because corporations made these calculations before. Send this to anyone who says regulations hurt business. June 18, 2023. The Titan began its descent toward the Titanic wreck. On board, 5 people. Stockton Rush, the CEO who built this business. Hamish Harding, a billionaire adventurer. Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman. Paul-Henri Narjolet, a Titanic expert who had made the dive dozens of times, but never in an uncertified submersible. At 9,000 feet deep, contact was lost. At 12,000 feet, the carbon fiber hull imploded. Everyone died instantly. 5 people died. But here's what the investigations found. OceanGate had internal documents calculating risk. They knew the hull was approaching its fatigue limit. They knew carbon fiber was unproven for repeated deep dives. They went anyway, because they had $250,000 tickets sold. The economics of sunk costs. Wait, I know what you're thinking. They signed the waiver. They knew the risk. Let me show you why that's exactly what OceanGate's lawyers want you to believe. Here are the internal OceanGate financial projections from 2021. Revenue target, $20 million by 2024. Cost structure, minimize certification and testing expenses. Look at this line item. Regulatory compliance, deferred. They put it in writing. The business model depended on avoiding oversight. This wasn't an accident, it was the financial plan. Remember that $2 to $5 million certification cost I showed you earlier. Here's where they documented the decision not to spend it. Same document, same spreadsheet. This is why I follow the money in every disaster. Subscribe if you want to see what corporations document before disasters happen. Because they always document it. The economics are always there. Let that sink in. They documented the cost-benefit analysis. Certification, $2 to $5 million. Waivers and insurance, under $100,000 annually. The math was obvious. And here's the brutal economics. Even after 5 people died, OceanGate's owner and investors aren't personally liable. The waivers worked. The company is bankrupt, but the architects of this system walked away. Because that's how liability shields function. They protect the people who made the decisions. 5 people died. Stockton Rush gambled with his own life and lost. But Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood, and Paul-Henri Nargeolet trusted the waiver meant proper risk assessment, not cost-cutting. And 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood didn't even want to go. Reports say he went to please his father for Father's Day. The families filed lawsuits, but OceanGate declared bankruptcy within months. The waiver language protected the company from wrongful death claims. The families are suing for gross negligence, the one exception to waiver protection. But even if they win, there's nothing left to collect. The $17.5 million in revenue? Already spent. They don't teach you in business school that waivers are liability weapons. Now you know what every corporate lawyer knows. Waivers transfer risk from balance sheets to bodies. The insurance industry has known this for decades. Have you or someone you know signed a waiver for an extreme activity? Share what happened below. I want to see how common this is. But here's what matters to you. Because OceanGate isn't unique. This exact business model, waivers instead of certification, international waters instead of regulation, profit margins over safety spending, it's how the entire adventure tourism industry operates. From Everest climbs to space tourism to shark cage diving. I saved the most disturbing evidence for last. A chart that shows how widespread this system really is and how your money is funding it. The adventure tourism industry generates $683 billion annually. Everest climbing expeditions charge $30,000 or $100,000 per person. Space tourism companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. $250,000 to $450,000 per seat. Every single one uses the same liability waiver model. Every single one operates in jurisdictional gray zones. Every single one prioritizes economics over redundant safety systems. OceanGate, 2023. SpaceX, 2024. Mount Everest, 2025. Same waiver, different altitude. If you've ever considered adventure tourism, check the company's certification status. Check if they operate in international waters. The pattern is visible now. Send this to someone planning an extreme experience before they sign anything. Here's the adventure tourism industry analysis from 2023. Of 50 major operators reviewed, 47 use similar liability waivers. 38 operate partially or fully outside regulated zones. Only 6 maintain certification equivalent to commercial passenger standards. The economics are clear. The less regulation, the higher the profit margins. It's not just OceanGate, it's systemic. Remember that OceanGate waiver from minute 4 and those financial projections at minute 13. This chart shows it's the industry standard. Same language, same cost structure, same calculated risk. You will encounter one of these companies. The question is whether you recognize the pattern before you sign the waiver and transfer the risk. This pattern operates across industries: insurance, finance, tourism, wherever liability can be transferred to you. Subscribe to understand the mechanisms before you're the one signing the documents. So what's the lesson? OceanGate charged $250,000 to transfer 100% of risk to customers, saved millions in safety costs, and when 5 people died, the company declared bankruptcy. The owners walked away. The waiver worked exactly as designed. It protected the business, not the passengers. Here's my controversial take. Waivers for experimental activities should be legally unenforceable when companies skip industry standard safety measures. I think if you cut corners, you can't hide behind paperwork. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. You can't unknow this now. Every adventure tourism waiver you see, you'll recognize the economic model. What will you do with this information? What financial system should I investigate next? Drop your suggestion below. Most interesting one gets the deep dive. But this connects to something bigger. The same liability waiver system that killed 5 people in a submersible. It's operating in the insurance industry right now, determining whether your claims get paid. And the documents I found will expose the entire mechanism. If these financial investigations matter to you, subscribe and hit the bell. I follow the money and systems mainstream media won't touch. Every single week, these patterns repeat. Click here for the insurance industry investigation, or this one if you missed it. Same economics, different industry. See you there.